All right, welcome back to Stopping Socialism TV. As always, I am Donald Kendal. Joining me, I got Chris Talgo, and we're going to be talking about Bernie Sanders struggling with some basic facts, some basic math. What else is new? But he's our favorite socialist, so we have to talk about him. But before we do, I always have to put that call out there to ask you guys to help us get our content out there in front of more people. You can do this by simply just hitting the like button, hitting the share button on the content. Leaving a comment is actually a big thing to kind of break through these big tech algorithms that stop content like this from seeing more people. And of course, hit that subscribe button as well. But Chris, this was a topic that came across my news feed from National Review, titled "Once Again, Bernie Sanders Struggles with the Concept of a Majority." So this story in itself is just kind of one little thing, but on top of a couple of other stories that I want to bring up in this segment, you start wondering about just like what's going on in Bernie Sanders' head. So let's just kind of go through this first one before we kind of start making these connections. So again, once again, Bernie Sanders struggles with the concept of a majority. So, like a lot of these stories are based around a tweet. So, Bernie Sanders recently tweeted just the other day saying, while the majority of the American people have expressed overwhelming support for the Build Back Better Act and delivering for working Americans, Republicans continue to oppose it. Maybe, just maybe. Oh man, that's another
hmm
common link here. Maybe, just maybe, that's why they have to resort to voter suppression. So, what is this based on? Where does he come up with this majority of Americans have expressed overwhelming support for the Build Back Better Act? It comes from nowhere. He just made it up. According to NPR, which is not necessarily a bastion of conservative thought, they said that Democrats have staked their political future on enacting President Biden's plans for trillions in social spending. But a new NPR Marist poll shows that most voters are skeptical of the party's proposals. Oh, so they're not overwhelmingly in support of it? Just 41% of the survey's respondents said they support the Build Back Better bill, the roughly $2 trillion bill currently being negotiated in Congress. Nearly three quarters of all Democrats said they support the bill, but only 36% of independents and, Republicans? And 13% of Republicans agreed. Moreover, the survey respondents were less optimistic about the in process Build Back Better legislation. Just 42% said they thought it would help people like them. So, I mean, this is par for the course, right, Chris? Bernie Sanders just coming out here saying that he's got these facts, and they're not factual at all. I mean, did he do any research before he put out this tweet?
Obviously not. The NPR poll said that it would cost 2 trillion. Well, we actually know that it would cost 5 trillion. But Donnie, what I think is going on here is that people understand that Build Back Better would significantly add to inflation. And the American people have been dealing with inflation for months now. We were told initially it was transitory, temporary, it would get better. It's gotten worse. It's getting worse. And Build Back Better would make it 10 times worse. Throwing more money into an economy that's already flush with cash is the completely opposite thing that we should be doing right now. However, Bernie always wanted to spend more money, always wanted to create more programs, more big government, just can't help himself. And like you said, he is flat out lying to
Right.
the American people about this.
Now, I hate playing this what if game or whataboutism or anything like that. But like, could you imagine if a Republican senator, I don't know, name one, came out and said like, "Oh yeah, the majority of Americans think that this, whatever legislation X is a good idea," and it turned out to be not the case. You would never hear the end of it. But Bernie Sanders gets a pass because he's old Uncle Bernie. He's just you just let him spout his rhetoric on Twitter, and we let him get away with it. Like, what
Well,
the hell?
well, we saw that in 2017 when the Republicans' Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was being proposed. The American people overwhelmingly supported it. However, the mainstream media did the opposite, saying that they didn't. So when the American people actually support a bill that they know is going to be to their benefit because it's going to cut their taxes and it's going to goose the economy, the mainstream media tries to pull the wool over their eyes, saying no, actually you don't support it. But then when the American people actually don't want a bill, the mainstream media, or at least in this case, a prominent Democratic senator, independent senator, excuse me, says that actually you support it.
Yeah.
So everything is upside is down, downside is up, just more of the same.
Well, it reminded me of a story that came out a couple of months ago. Looks like October, where Bernie Sanders had another tweet. This one is discussed in this Reason article. Bernie Sanders thinks 48 senators make a majority. Where again, from Twitter, he says two senators cannot be allowed to defeat what 48 senators and 210 House members want. We must stand with the working families of our country. We must combat climate change. We must delay passing the infrastructure bill until we pass a strong reconciliation bill. So this one, just your average person on Twitter, I don't know how politically astute they are, but if they read this and they're like, yeah, how can two senators hold up what 48 want? I mean, that's 48 to 2. Like, of course, that's a strong majority. But of course, what he left out is all of the Republicans on that other side of the aisle, what, like 50 of them, that don't want this as well. So it's like, no, the actual count is 52 to 48, Bernie. You can't just hide these facts.
Well, but if we can read between the lines of his tweet, what he's saying is we should be a one-party dictatorship. The Democrats and he's an independent. They have complete dominant control over the government, and that other party that has 50 senators, they just don't count.
Right.
So what he's saying is that one side of the aisle controls half the Senate, but they just don't count. And I think that just is so symbolic of the kind of government that Bernie wants. Bernie wants a rubber stamp government that is just going to push through any and all spending bills, regardless of whether they're good for the country, good for the American people, because he deems them good.
Right. Yeah. I was going to say, I wonder who controls Bernie Sanders' Twitter account because, a lot of these politicians surely are not managing their own Twitter account or social media. But like, I wouldn't even be surprised if this came straight from Bernie Sanders' mouth. I've heard enough of his conversations, his interviews to know that like this is actually what's going around in his head. So for it to be presented this way on Twitter, it doesn't. I don't even flinch anymore. There's this other tweet that I want to bring in. That I want to bring up that I just saw. This is from just like a week ago. It says, you know what? If Starbucks can find the money to pay their CEO nearly $15 million in compensation, I think that maybe they can afford to pay their workers a decent wage with decent benefits. Not a radical idea.
Exclamation mark.
Exclamation mark. Yeah, there's a couple of exclamation marks in there. But I think he puts that maybe in there because he really doesn't even fact check himself. He just throws that in there as just like, I could be wrong. Like he legitimately might be wrong. And in this
Yeah.
case, he definitely is wrong. But you were telling me that Starbucks is actually pretty much known for having like pretty decent wages for being a coffee joint.
I worked at Starbucks after high school for a couple of years in college, trying to make some extra money. And I remember the reason why I worked there is because they not only offered healthcare benefits to full and part-time workers, but at that time they were offering a very generous wage. And right now, Starbucks is offering minimum $15 wage to all workers.
Mm,
So this notion that Bernie's peddling, that Starbucks is, nickel and diming their employees while their CEO is, just swimming in $100 bills. It's just
raking
so
it in.
not true.
Well, I just so again, like, does he fact check himself? Does he look this up? I don't think so because I'm just gonna do some basic math here, right? So this is just back of the envelope math. Actually, it's on my calculator on my phone here. Let's be real about this. But so $15 million, 15 million. How many employees does Starbucks have? Luckily, I had to look that up before we hit record. So about 350,000. So 15 million divided by 350,000. We're at $42. We're at $42 per employee. So this is, I assume, the $15 million he's referring to is a yearly salary, I would assume. So that's
Yep.
$42 over the course of a year per per employee. So assuming that the employee works full time, we're going to divide that by 52 weeks. So now we're talking about a weekly increase to the pay if we were to redistribute the wealth of the CEO, 82 cents per week. Now, if we're talking about a 40-hour work week, let's divide this by 40. So if we were to redistribute all the wealth from the CEO down to each and one of their employees, each one of their employees can expect to see a 2 cent per hour raise.
Well, actually, that would be a 1 cent raise because the government's going to probably take about half of that. So,
That's a very good point.
so they're getting an extra penny per paycheck, which is, that's pretty substantial there. But I think this shows, how little respect Bernie has for CEOs and other titans of industry who build things. The CEO of Starbucks, that guy, he works his what off, and he is responsible for those 390,000 employees. So that guy's got a lot of responsibility. He's got a lot on his shoulders. And I think that you can make the argument that $15 million is a is a very large salary, but keep in mind that this gentleman is in charge of one of the biggest companies in the world, and he's being he's being compensated because there are only a very select amount of people that can do what he does.
Mhm.
Anyone, I mean, I can attest to this. Anyone can go and work at Starbucks, making drinks and working the cashier. Not many people can run a international company with 80,000 stores, and all the responsibility and all the work that comes with that. So
Yeah, this is this is the bad side of populism over here.
yes.
Like in the last several years, there's been a lot of conversation about this concept of populism. Obviously, Donald Trump kind of started to ride that little wave of populism with his campaign and all of that stuff. And there are some good things to be said about populism. But this is the bad side of it. When you've got a politician like Bernie Sanders, who, became pretty close multiple times at being at least the Democratic candidate, running for the presidency. So he was pretty close to having that highest position in the United States. When he spouts stuff like this, and you got his legions of followers that just retweet it and voice their support for this type of stuff when the actual facts of the matter don't line up with what he's saying don't line up with reality at all. That's a recipe for absolute disaster. And with this, it's just like him spouting out this rhetoric so that he can get some internet points. But when he starts putting the same type of logic towards, I don't know, universal health care or universal basic income or some jobs guarantee thing where the math just does not line up, it's a
Mhm.
recipe for disaster.
That's very true, and I wonder if Twitter is going to mark this as disinformation or misinformation because it's obviously not true. But like you said, this is par for the course for Bernie. He plays fast and loose with the facts all the time. He can get away with it because the media is in his camp. It's sad because really, I think what this tweet represents is envy, and the American people were supposed to be an innovative, you know pick you up by your bootstraps country, and this guy is coming here and saying, oh, it's the CEO that is hoarding all the money, and that's
Yeah,
not true. That
right.
is not true at all. And if any one of those Starbucks workers wants to go and start their own coffee shop, more power to them. Go do it, just like someone did at Howard Schultz did at Starbucks, you know 30, 40 years ago. Go
Yeah.
go build your own company.
Yeah, it's definitely a class warfare rhetoric,
Yep.
and it's not productive, I guess we'll say. But that's Bernie Sanders, and of course, there's no limits on Bernie Sanders stories. We'll probably be talking about him in a week from now as well, because again, he's just a source of not great information, great stories to talk about. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on Bernie Sanders. Chris, any last words about our favorite socialist here before I wrap up the segment?
I hope everyone also realizes that Bernie Sanders has made many millions of dollars selling books, and I'm pretty sure that he did not redistribute all the earnings that he made with all the people who edited it or printed it or whatever they happen to do on his book. Pretty sure that Bernie Sanders pocketed a lot of that money and has multiple vacation homes and lives a very lavish lifestyle. So
Yeah.
maybe Bernie should practice what he preaches.
Yeah, that is a very good point. All right, that's going to do it for this segment of Stopping Socialism TV. If you like this content and you want to see more, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Like I said, if you want to help us get this message out there to more people, you can do so free of cost, obviously, just hitting the like button, leaving a comment, sharing this content. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can go to stoppingsocialism.com, or you can find a lot of that content shared across our social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Parlor, Instagram, anything like that. If you look hard enough, you will find us. Chris, you are a ghost on social media, so just join me in saying goodbye to the fine people.
One more very quick thought. When I worked at Starbucks, we had a tip jar, and around the holidays, people were very generous. So I just would like to say to all the people who go to Starbucks or any coffee shop, if there's a tip jar, throw in a $5 or $10 bill. It will make that person's day. It really
Yeah,
will.
that's a good point and a very good message for the Christmas time that we find ourselves in. All right, thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you next time.